Good morning everyone, Janie here. Welcome back to my channel and welcome back to my Gardening for Beginners series. Today we are going all in on cut flowers, which is very exciting. I think it's a topic that a lot of us are really passionate about, and it's kind of the it thing in gardening these days. It's really fun, and I can't even describe how wonderful it is to have basically an unlimited supply of bouquets to give to your friends and loved ones. So this is my Gardening for Beginners series, where every week on Monday I release a video talking about a deep dive, different topic of gardening, with the goal of, by the time 2022 gardening season starts, all you new beginners out there are ready to go and know everything that you need to know to get going. If you haven't already, check out last week's video where it's all about seed starting, the equipment you need, timing for seed starting, everything you need. It's really gonna help with this video, this cut flower garden video, because everything with cut flowers starts from seed, so knowing the basics is really important. I'll go ahead and I'll link that video up here. So for a little background into my cut flower garden journey, my first cut flower garden I started last year. I have this little space on the side of my driveway. It's a 10-foot by 20-foot space, so 200 square feet. It's not very big. It had some landscaping in it that I just wasn't excited about it. It was boring and I didn't know what I was gonna do with it. And so I thought, oh, cut flower garden would be absolutely perfect. It's a full sun spot, and I decided to go for it last year. So I ripped everything out. I borrowed a tiller from my neighbor who's a gardener as well, and I tilled a whole bunch of compost and good stuff into the soil, and then I added a drip system to prepare my cut flower garden. So being that I've only done a cut flower garden for one full year, I want you guys to take this video more of what I've learned during my first year as an amateur gardener with firsthand experience and how it worked for me. I don't sell my flowers, I give them away or I use them in my own home. So this is more of an amateur cut flower garden video. Just wanted to say that. So the first thing you want to do with your cut flower garden is you want to plan the space that you have. So find an area in your yard, in your garden, where it's full sun, because most of these flowers like full sun. There's some flowers that you can get away with part sun, and actually there's a couple flowers that only did well in part sun locations for me. Usually a cut flower garden is located in full sun, and it doesn't have to be big. I talk about Lisa Mason-Ziegler Cool Flowers all the time. If you guys get this book, she does have a whole section on starting a cut flower garden in a 3 by 10 area, so a 30 square foot area, which is not big at all. And she goes over what flowers to pick and everything like that. So this book is really fantastic. I'll link it down below. I'll link her website down below. It's called The Gardener's Workshop. So after you've decided where you're gonna locate your cut flower garden, the next thing and the most fun thing is to decide what cut flowers you're gonna do. And there's a lot of different ways to figure out what flowers are best for cut flower gardening. Not every seed that you buy from the seed store is going to be a good flower. You want one with a really long stem, and it's going to hold up in the vase really well. So a really good thing to do is go to a seed company like Johnny Seeds is my favorite one, or Floret, and then just look, cut flower seeds, and a whole bunch of stuff will pop up and you can kind of decide. A fabulous resource to use is going on to Floret Flower Farm's website. If you guys aren't familiar with Floret, it's Erin Benzakein, I think is how you say her name. I'm sure all of you guys have heard of her, but she's just absolutely fantastic. And on her website, she has a market bouquet ingredients PDF where she goes through all the different kinds of flowers that are helpful to have when you make bouquets. Or, market bouquets, which is just kind of a mixed cut flower bouquet. And she just goes through really good options depending on whether it's spring or summer or fall that you're focusing on. So to make it simple, I think that you can divide the cut flowers up into 3 categories, and that would be your focal, your supporting flowers, and then also your filler flowers. So a good example of focal flower would be like a dahlia or sometimes you can use those really big binary giant zinnias. Those are really good focal flowers. A supporting flower would be like a snapdragon or an aster or something like that. And then a filler would be the greenery, you know, kind of stuff that you have around it. And some good examples of that would be like some Dusty Miller or some ornamental basil. I think that last year one of my mistakes was not having enough filler flowers, which is a really common mistake for new cut flower gardeners because you want the beautiful, colorful stuff and you don't want to deal with the other green stuff. But I'm telling you, if you have filler flowers, if you have filler greenery that you can just add to your bouquet, you can take one focal flower and make it into something that's so beautiful. So don't forget the fillers, don't forget the supporting flowers. They're super, super important and you'll be happy that you planted them. So some good examples of focal flowers, like I was saying, are dahlias, big zinnias. Sunflowers are fantastic, but obviously those are more in the summer, the deep summer. Peonies, and then some examples of filler flower are Ami dill. I had that growing in my garden last year and it did so well and I used a ton of it, so much of it. And I think it's reseeding all over my cut flower garden again this year, so I might have a ton of it this year too. Bouquet, which I'm seeding this year. I have it growing in my cut flower garden right now for my cool flower method. Bells of Ireland, which I did last year and I absolutely loved it and I didn't have enough. I think I'm gonna do it again this year, not in my cut flower garden, in my regular garden, because it's just so beautiful and it's worth it. And then, like I said, ornamental basil, I'm gonna grow some of that this year as well. An important thing to think about when you're planning out your cut flower garden is whether you're going to do a single planting of flowers or whether you're going to do succession planting. And last year I did a single planting and it was a lot easier for me to plan out. And basically what that means is you don't really pay attention to the blooming time. You kind of just plan, okay, this space is going to be dedicated to a sunflower, this space is dedicated to a snapdragon. And a lot of flowers won't bloom all season long, especially for me. I live in Northern California, zone 9B, and we have an extremely long growing season. And so a lot of times things weren't blooming because it wasn't the time of the year for them to bloom yet. A good example is my gomphrena. I used QIS purple gomphrena and I loved it, but when I first put it in right around our last frost date, I thought I did something wrong because it just sat there and it was struggling and it wasn't doing well and I had no idea what was going on. And then once things started heating up in July and August, it just exploded and it just kind of took over. And so I realized, you know, it just wasn't ready to grow. It wasn't ready to be planted in the early spring. It needed that warm soil temperature to grow. So I had saved that whole row for gomphrena and really I didn't need to because it wasn't doing anything for the first 2 or 3 months that I had it in there. So there's the single planting method, which I did last year, and then there's succession sowing, which I'm actually gonna do this year. And to me, succession sowing is a lot more complicated because you kind of have to think about the timing of everything that's going to bloom, when you have to sow your seeds, you know, all that kind of stuff. And the idea is that you're going to sow spring flowers and then take those out, and in the exact same spot you're going to sow summer flowers or late fall flowers, right? And so basically you're reusing the land, the space that you have, to sow flowers that bloom at different times of the year. So in my mind, that's a little bit more advanced cut flower gardening. This is my first year doing succession sowing and we'll see how it goes. But I have to say, even without doing succession sowing, even with doing just a single planting last year in a 10 by 20 foot area, I had so many flowers, so many flowers. So succession sowing is not necessary. It will definitely be helpful, I think, because I think I'll have blooms earlier and blooms later and not just a massive amount of blooms right in the middle of the growing season when most things bloom. So we'll see how it goes. It's kind of up to you what you want to start with your cut flower garden, whether you want to go with the single sowing method or the succession sowing method. So I will do a better shot of this, but this was my, I mean, I used this every single day last year. And what I did is I made a list of all the seeds that I had decided to grow over on this side. I made a list of when I was going to either direct sow them or when I was going to transplant them out. I made a list of how far apart I had to space each of these flowers, whether it was 6 inches, 9 inches, or 12 inches, and then the watering that I needed in addition to that. On that list, I also noted what kind of support these plants needed so that they wouldn't fall over. And then I also did it from shortest, from shortest plant all the way up to tallest plant, because the area that I had for cut flower gardening was, you know, kind of a narrow, long area, and I wanted it to be kind of like a beautiful vista from the sidewalk. And so I wanted to have the lowest plants in the front and then build up to the highest plants. And the right way to do it, I was more focused on how it looked in my garden, you know, because this is in my front yard and everybody was walking by. The right way to do it is to make sure that, you know, where the sun is, that a really tall plant is not going to shade out a shorter plant. So really, I didn't do it. I should have done it the opposite way. I should have had, based on the location of my cut flower space, I should have had it backwards, and I should have had the tallest plants in the back, you know, all the way up to the shortest plants. But that just didn't work for me. It just would have looked totally weird. So, you know, planning it out, having a little map like this, you know, is really helpful. So then you can also see that last year I decided to plant all of my cut flowers in rows. I thought that that would be a lot easier. I thought it'd be easier to harvest. Each row across corresponded to each different flower, and then I colored it in based on what the bloom color would be so I could see what it would look like. And that was really pretty. I'll show you a picture right here of it. It was beautiful. It looked really great. I really liked it. This year I wanted to try something a little bit different. I really wanted to focus on succession sowing this year and then not having a whole space, like a whole line that was empty, which did happen sometimes last year based on, you know, like that gomphrena. There was, you know, a whole line that didn't bloom for a couple months and there was just nothing there. So this year I'm succession sowing, and then I kind of did undulating islands of flowers so that if something wasn't blooming or something was, you know, a little seedling at the time, it would look kind of beautiful and weave in and out from one another. So I've showed this to you guys before, and I'll do another close-up on this, but this is kind of the idea that I'm going for, where each circle or, you know, oval shape, whatever, corresponds to a different flower. And then I have 3 of these papers, and this is my winter spring plan, and then I have a spring summer plan, which corresponds to the exact same space, it's just a different flower. And then finally I have a summer and fall plan. So we will see how this goes. This was very complicated. It took me a while to plan out, you know, all the timing of everything. And when I had to sow things indoors or outdoor, direct sow or anything like that. So like I said, it's a lot more complicated to do succession sowing, but you know, I just want to grow and learn new things, and so that's what I'm trying this year. I very well might go back to my original rows because I really did enjoy it, and I thought that the flowers grew really well, you know, kind of all in a straight line like that. So we'll see how it goes. You know, this is fun. This is an experiment. I'm not a professional. This is just something that I like to do as a hobby. So one more thing that you have to consider when you're deciding which flowers that you're gonna pick and where you're putting them is you have to know whether a flower is a single cut flower or a cut and come again flower. And a single cut flower, an example of that is like a single stem sunflower. Basically, when you grow it and you cut it, that's it. The plant is done. It's not going to bloom again. You've used it for the season, and you're done with it. So that is using a large amount of space. If you're not going to succession sow, you're using a large amount of space for one bloom, one flower. So it needs to be a really good flower. And sometimes those big sunflowers are really good flowers, and it's totally worth it. Another option or way to do it is to make sure you get cut and come again flowers. And there's tons of cut and come again flowers. Probably the best one is zinnias, where the more you cut it, the more it'll bloom. Basically, you cut down one flower and then two blooms will come from the spot that you cut it. There's also sunflower options that are cut and come again flowers. Snapdragons, you know, I'm blanking on all of them, but there's tons of cut and come again flowers. I think that it's just an important thing to know and to note what seeds that you're purchasing, what seeds that you're planning on, whether it's going to be a single cut flower or a cut and come again flower. I just don't want you to be disappointed when you realize it's a single cut flower. Okay, so you've decided on all the seeds that you want. You've purchased them. Do you guys know that seeds sell out? I just want to make sure you guys know that. I didn't know that. Seeds sell out so fast. If you want to get something really interesting, like seed packets from Florette, you have to make sure that you're on there right away, like the day she has her seed sale, because they sell out so quickly. And even places like Johnny Seeds and Baker's Creek, they sell out as well. So this is a good time for this video to be coming out because people are buying their seeds right now, and you guys should be buying your seeds right now. Just a little PSA. So once you've picked out all the seeds you want and you've ordered them from the supplier, then you need to know whether you're going to direct sow them or whether you're going to transplant them. And I've said this a couple times in my videos, but I have so much better luck with transplanting. I'm not sure why. I think that I don't have enough green thumbs yet, but I just do such a better job when I put them under grow lights. And a lot of cut flower farmers do the exact same thing. They like transplanting their seeds out. It's just a little bit more controlled as opposed to just relying on the environment outdoors. So if you look on the back of the seed packet, it will tell you what they recommend, whether it's direct sow or whether it's transplant. But just, you know, take that with a grain of salt. I've told the story about my Bells of Ireland, and that is recommended to direct sow, and I did it, and I direct sowed, and nothing happened. As soon as I finally transplanted and just treated them like any other seed, they popped up right away, and it was perfect and easy. So, you know, take it with a grain of salt. The recommendations that they have on the back of the seed packet. Every environment's different and every gardener is different. And so you just have to, you know, it's a trial and error type thing. Knowing whether or not you're going to direct seed or whether you're going to transplant, and then knowing when you need to sow those seeds. Obviously, if you're going to direct seed, you can sow them a lot later. If you're going to transplant, you're going to have to do it a lot earlier. Check out my video up here all about frost dates. And that's a really good explainer on when you should be sowing your seeds, because on the back of the seed packets they'll say 8 to 12 weeks before your frost date sow these seeds, or 6 to 8 weeks before your frost date sow the seeds. So you have to know when your frost date is, and you have to know when you have to start, you know, you count back, and you have to know when you have to start sowing your seeds indoors so that they're ready to be transplanted out around your last frost date time. So another thing that they're going to talk about on the back of the seed packet is the spacing for your flower, and every flower is a little bit different. Some flowers grow really big and they need 12 by 12 spacing. Some can do it 6 inches apart, right? And you can, of course, you can fib it a little. I think something that helps you, you know, is really important to help you decide is what type of irrigation you're going to use, whether you're going to water with a hose or whether you're going to use drip irrigation. And then when you purchase that irrigation, if you have inline drip, which is the holes inside the tubing, whether you're going to purchase 12-inch drip or 6-inch drip, and then that's a good way to decide how far apart you're going to plant these seedlings. So the last thing I want to talk about for cut flower gardening, especially for beginner gardeners for cut flower gardening, is do not forget to support your plants. This is something that I totally made the mistake with last year. I thought, oh, I live in California, we don't get high winds, we don't get rainstorms during the summer, I don't need to support these plants, it'll be fine. And boy, was I wrong. I wished I had supported those plants from the beginning. And there's different ways to support plants. You can put a bamboo stake in right next to the seedling and then just tie the seedling to the bamboo stake the whole time. You can corral them, which is where you have 4 stakes all around, and then you take twine and basically put it in a box to make sure that the flowers don't fall over. And then there's something called Hortonova netting. I'll link it below. I got mine from Amazon, and it's basically just plastic netting that the plants will grow through, and then that netting holds it up, and you put that netting horizontally, and so you know, as the plants grow through, the horizontal netting is supporting the plants. And so that's my plan for this year. I'm going to use that Hortanova trellising to support the plants. But it's just the type of thing that, you know, one gust of wind can push these plants over. And especially my snapdragons, I would get so sad because I'd come out and be like, oh, they're bent over, and then that was it. And then they'd start, you know, they'd start growing kind of like that, kind of in a curve, which made it interesting for cut flower arrangements. But there was a whole bunch of time when I just wanted a straight stem. So you have to remember these cut flowers, the reason why they're cut flowers is because they have really long stems. You really have to support them if you're going to use them as, you know, in bouquets and as a cut flower garden. So don't make the mistake I did. So I hope this was helpful for you guys. You know, it's kind of just word vomit, you know, and me telling you everything that I learned from last year and everything that I'm planning for this year. But the big points are, pick out your area. It doesn't have to be a big space. And, you know, pick up this book, see if you can get it from your library. It's super, super helpful. Even if you don't choose the flowers that she recommends, it just gives you good motivation to realize that you can do a cut flower garden in a really small space and you're really gonna enjoy it. It's totally worth it. So pick out your space, pick out your seeds, figure out when you need to sow them and where you're gonna put them in your cut flower garden space. Make sure you support them. Decide whether or not you're going to do succession sowing or whether you're just going to do a single planting. You know, the options are endless. If you guys haven't checked out Florette Flower Farm, check it out because it's such good inspiration. And I can't tell you guys how good it feels to walk up to somebody and have a fresh cut of flowers that you've grown for them. It feels so wonderful. And my girls and I, we even had some free flower days where I had all these extra blooms I didn't know what to do with, and I knew they were going to start fading. So I cut them all, we sat in front of our house, and we just handed out bouquets to people passing by. It was so much fun. It was such an enjoyable part of my gardening season last year, and I'm really excited to do it again this year. So if you guys learned something from this video, please consider subscribing. I'm going to keep releasing new videos in my Gardening for Beginners series every Monday on my channel, Dig, Plant, Water, Repeat. On the other days, I have other gardening blogs and vlogs and projects and all that kind of stuff. Please leave comments if you have any questions down below, and I hope to see you in another video very soon.